The morning sun stretched its golden fingers across the skyline of Atlanta, kissing the glass towers that mirrored ambition. In one of those towers, 40 floors up, a man stood by the window, coffee in hand, his eyes scanning the horizon like a general preparing for another day's battle. His name was Darius Cole, the CEO and founder of Cole & Coburn Jewelers, a luxury brand known worldwide for crafting some of the rarest diamonds ever sold. He wasn't just rich, he was a story. A legend carved from struggle and steel. Born in a cramped one-bedroom apartment in Detroit, raised by a mother who worked 2 jobs, Darius had clawed his way up every rung of the ladder society tried to pull away from him. His skin was dark, his voice deep and steady, and his eyes, sharp as obsidian, held the calm of a man who had faced storms and learned to smile through lightning. His office was sleek and modern, glass, chrome, and silence. Behind him hung framed covers of Forbes, Business Insider, and the Wall Street Journal. Headlines read, "The Diamond King of the New Age, How Darius Cole Redefined Luxury. From Poverty to Power, the man behind the brand." But this morning he wasn't thinking about any of that. He wasn't thinking about profit charts, investors, or the stock market. He was thinking about his late mother, Ruth Cole, the woman who told him, "Never forget where you came from, but never let where you came from define where you'll stay." He smiled faintly, whispering, "You'd be proud today, Ma." On the wall, a digital clock blinked 9:02 a.m. He had a board meeting at 10, but before that, he wanted to visit one of his flagship stores downtown, unannounced. It was something he did often, quietly, to observe how customers were treated, how his employees spoke, how the brand felt on the ground. He believed the true soul of a company wasn't in reports. It was in the way a customer was greeted. He slipped off his tailored navy blazer and changed into a casual outfit, dark jeans, a black turtleneck, and a gray overcoat. To the world he looked like any other well-dressed man. No entourage, no chauffeur today. Just him, his Tesla parked downstairs, and a quiet desire to walk among his own people. As the elevator doors opened, his assistant, Marla, appeared, holding a tablet. "Sir, your 10 a.m. presentation is ready. Shall I call the board?" He smiled. "I'll be back before then. I'm just taking a walk." "Sir, it's—" She hesitated, then added carefully, "The downtown branch, isn't it?" He chuckled. "You know me too well." Marla shook her head, half smiling. "Don't scare the staff again, Mr. Cole." He winked. "Only if they give me a reason." Moments later, the elevator slid down like a whisper through the building's core. As he stepped into the lobby, a few employees greeted him with awe. He waved casually, no air of superiority, just quiet confidence. That was Darius Cole's style. He didn't need to prove he belonged. His very presence did. Outside, the city buzzed with life. People hurried with coffee cups and cell phones, horns blaring, street vendors shouting. Darius slipped on his sunglasses and joined the current. He enjoyed this. Anonymity. No cameras, no headlines, just the rhythm of the world he came from. The jewelry store was only a few blocks away. Its glass facade gleamed under the morning sun, showcasing diamonds that caught the light like captured stars. Above the entrance, bold letters read, "Cole & Co. Jewelers, EST, 2012. He stopped for a second, taking in the sight. His name on that building had cost him years of sweat, rejection, and disbelief. When he first pitched the idea of a black-owned luxury jewelry brand, investors had laughed. One even said, "Luxury doesn't wear that color." He remembered that line word for word. Now, that same investor's company bought from him at wholesale. Darius exhaled slowly, pride swelling in his chest, but also humility. He never forgot the nights he went hungry, the winters without heat, or the time his mother pawned her wedding ring so he could afford his first semester of college. That memory still burned inside him like a vow. He opened the door and stepped inside. The store was pristine. White marble floors, glass counters, soft lighting that made every gemstone look like it glowed from within. A subtle scent of vanilla and cedar filled the air. Behind the counters stood 3 sales associates, all dressed sharply in black and white uniforms. A young woman at the reception glanced up. Her polite smile flickered for a second as she looked at him. The casual clothes, the deep brown skin, the confident but quiet walk. "Good morning, sir," she said, tone professional. "Morning," Darius replied, his voice calm. "I'm just browsing." He moved toward a display case showcasing a collection of platinum watches, designs he had personally approved 6 months ago. He smiled faintly at one of them, the Chrono Lume, a piece that symbolized his company's first international award. But before he could admire it longer, he noticed movement in his peripheral vision, subtle, cautious. The security guard by the door was watching him closely. It wasn't new to him. It wasn't the first time someone looked at him like that. But still, it stung. He pretended not to notice, continuing to browse, his fingers tracing the glass. Behind the counter, a male employee whispered something to a colleague. Their eyes flicked toward him, then quickly away. Darius straightened his back. He knew this script too well. He'd lived it before. In stores, restaurants, airports, the silent math people did in their heads when they saw him. Black man plus luxury space. Suspicion. The air thickened. He turned slightly, locking eyes with the security guard. The man quickly looked away, pretending to check the camera feed. Darius's jaw tightened. He said nothing, but his silence carried weight. A moment later, the same young woman approached. Her smile was tight now, her tone overly polite, the kind that hides discomfort. "Sir, can I help you with something specific today?" "Yes," Darius replied, lowering his sunglasses slightly. "I was looking at the Cole Legacy collection. Do you have any of those in stock?" Her brows furrowed slightly. "That's our premium line, sir. Do you have an appointment with one of our consultants?" He almost laughed. "An appointment? For his own brand?" "No," he said evenly. "I don't. Should I?" She hesitated. "Well, normally that collection isn't displayed without..." "Without what?" His tone was calm, but his eyes cut like glass. "Without a prior booking, sir," she said quickly. "Company policy?" He nodded slowly, then smiled, not with joy, but with quiet disbelief. As he turned back to the display, he caught sight of the guard again, speaking into his earpiece. And just like that, the air in the store shifted, subtle, but unmistakable. Something ugly was about to happen. And Darius Cole, the man who owned every inch of this place, was about to experience what too many men who looked like him had felt all their lives. Suspicion without reason. He didn't know it yet, but in just 9 minutes, the entire world would know his name again, not for his diamonds, but for what happened next. The second hand of the clock above the glass counter ticked softly, echoing through the silence of the showroom. Darius could feel every beat of it, slow, deliberate, almost mocking. The light from the chandeliers glimmered against the polished surfaces, creating a reflection of him standing among the jewels he had designed, financed, and built from nothing. Yet somehow, in this very place that carried his name in silver letters, he had become an outsider. A subtle unease began to move through the air like invisible static. The receptionist whispered to a tall man in a navy vest, the floor manager, judging by his earpiece and posture. The man nodded once, eyes flicking toward Darius before he started walking across the floor with the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Good morning, sir," the manager greeted, his tone courteous but edged with suspicion. "Can I help you with something today?" Darius looked up from the glass display and smiled faintly. "Just admiring the work. Fine craftsmanship." "Thank you," the man replied, studying him. "These are part of our exclusive line. We usually show them by appointment." "Yes, I heard," Darius said softly. "But I've always believed great art should be seen, don't you think?" The manager chuckled awkwardly, then gestured toward the door. "May I ask, are you familiar with our brand?" Darius tilted his head slightly. "Quite a bit. Of course, sir." The manager's polite mask held firm, but his tone carried something colder now, the measured politeness of someone who thought they were being tested. "It's just that we have to be careful. There have been a few incidents lately. People coming in, pretending to browse and, well, pretending?" Darius's eyebrow rose. "Just standard precaution," the manager replied quickly. "You understand?" "I do," Darius said, voice calm. "But I also understand when someone's being profiled." The man blinked, clearly startled. "Sir, that's not what—" Before he could finish, a sudden noise cut through the air. One of the smaller display alarms beeped. A bracelet had shifted on its mount, triggered by motion sensors. Everyone turned toward the sound. The guard, standing by the door, immediately tensed. His hand went to his radio. The manager's face stiffened, then his eyes snapped to Darius, the only customer in the store. That single look, short, sharp, and loaded, said everything. Darius felt it. The sting, the judgment, the centuries of history packed into one glance. He exhaled slowly, jaw tightening. "Don't tell me you think that was me." The manager hesitated, his professionalism cracking. "Of course not, sir, but..." "But what?" Darius's voice lowered an octave, calm, measured, but dangerous. The guard began to walk over. The young receptionist watched nervously, chewing her lip. Another customer, a middle-aged white woman near the entrance, pretended to browse but was clearly watching everything. Her hand hovered over her phone. The air grew colder. The manager cleared his throat. "I'm sure it's just the sensor acting up, but we have procedures to follow. Security needs to check the footage. Standard practice." "Footage of what?" Darius asked. "A bracelet that moved half an inch?" The guard approached now. Tall, bald, eyes narrowed in caution. "Sir, we're just doing our job," he said. Darius smiled, not kindly. "I own the job you're doing." The manager blinked. "Excuse me?" But before Darius could reply, the guard spoke again, firmer. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step aside while we verify the case alarm." Darius turned to him, face expressionless. "You want me to step aside?" "Yes, sir." "It's protocol." He laughed softly, shaking his head. "Protocol. Always a convenient word when you need to hide disrespect." The young receptionist, clearly uncomfortable, tried to defuse the tension. "Maybe it's just a technical glitch," she said. "It happens sometimes when someone walks too close to the glass." But the manager ignored her. "Sir, please cooperate," he insisted, voice rising slightly. Darius stood still, his silence louder than their words. For a moment, the room felt frozen, the kind of stillness before a thunderstorm. Then he spoke, voice steady as stone. "Do you know who designed that bracelet you're so worried about?" The manager frowned. "No, sir." "I did," Darius said. The man blinked. "You... what?" But the guard stepped in. "Sir, please, we don't want trouble." Darius's smile vanished. "Trouble?" His tone sharpened, though his voice never rose. "You call this trouble? You accuse a man of stealing in a store that bears his name and call that procedure?" The guard shifted uneasily, glancing at the manager. "Maybe we should call the police," he murmured. That did it. The words dropped into the room like a bomb. The receptionist gasped quietly. The customer by the door whispered something under her breath. Darius felt the temperature in the room plummet. "Call the police?" he repeated, voice quiet, dangerously quiet. The manager lifted a hand. "Let's not escalate." But the guard was already on his radio. "Control, this is downtown Coal Branch. We may need assistance verifying a possible theft. Customer refusing to cooperate." Darius exhaled sharply, disbelief flickering in his eyes. "Refusing to cooperate? I'm standing right here." The guard didn't respond. He turned slightly away, still speaking into his mic. That was when the first phone camera came up. The woman near the door started recording. Someone outside glanced through the glass and paused. Darius straightened. His chest rose with a deep breath, the kind that keeps a man from exploding. His mother's voice echoed faintly in his memory. "Son, when they underestimate you, don't shout. Let your silence scare them." He looked directly at the manager. "Do you even know whose name is on that door?" The man hesitated, visibly confused by his tone. "Sir, please calm down. You're making this worse for yourself." Darius almost smiled. "For myself," he repeated softly, as if tasting the words. "You have no idea what you're saying." Outside, a police siren wailed faintly in the distance. Inside, the tension reached its peak. Every employee in the store watched, frozen, uncomfortable, unsure what to do. The receptionist's hands trembled as she pretended to rearrange brochures. The guard stood firm beside Darius, one hand near his belt radio, the other gesturing for him to stay still. The irony burned. A man who owned multiple jewelry stores across 3 countries, now treated like a criminal in one of them. And the most painful part? He wasn't even surprised. He'd seen it before, in boardrooms where people assumed he was an assistant, in airports where security dogs followed him, in restaurants where waiters offered cheaper menu options before realizing who he was. The same story. Different scene. He stared at the display again, the bracelet gleaming under the lights, the one he designed in memory of his mother. He had named it Ruth's Promise. It symbolized strength, grace, and resilience. Now it was being used as the excuse for his humiliation. Darius took another breath. His eyes softened, but his expression turned unreadable, the look of a man quietly deciding something final. The manager, thinking he had finally intimidated the suspect, said, "Sir, please understand, we have to protect company property." Darius met his gaze. "You think company property's at risk?" "Yes, sir." He stepped closer, just one small, powerful step. "You're right about that." For a split second, no one understood. Then his phone buzzed in his coat pocket. He took it out, pressed one button, and said simply, "This is Darius, shut it down." The words were calm, unemotional. The manager frowned. "I'm sorry, what?" Darius put the phone away. "You'll find out." Seconds later, the lights above flickered. The touchscreen sales systems froze. The digital locks on the display cases clicked, all at once. The store's background music stopped. Every head turned. The receptionist gasped. "What's happening?" The guard looked at the ceiling cameras. "System glitch?" Darius turned toward the entrance. "You have exactly 9 minutes before corporate sends in the regional team." The manager stepped forward. "What? Who are you?" Darius faced him fully, his voice deep and unwavering. "I'm the man who built this place. I'm Darius Cole, the CEO of Cole & Commerce Jewelers." Silence. The kind of silence that doesn't just stop sound. It stops air itself. The receptionist's jaw dropped. The guard froze, radio halfway to his mouth. The manager's face drained of color. Darius adjusted his coat. "Now tell me, do you still want to call the police?" The moment the name Darius Cole left his lips, the store fell into a stunned, echoing silence. It was as if every sound, the faint hum of the lights, the soft buzz of the air conditioning, the distant traffic outside, had been sucked into a vacuum. The manager blinked rapidly, as though his mind refused to process what he had just heard. The security guard's hand froze mid-air, still gripping his radio, while the young receptionist covered her mouth in disbelief. Darius stood still, tall and composed, every inch the man he claimed to be, and for the first time, they began to see it. The confidence wasn't arrogance. The calm wasn't fear. It was authority. You're Mr. Cole?" The manager stammered, voice trembling between confusion and guilt. Darius turned his head slightly, eyes locking onto him. "That's what I said. But sir, I didn't recognize you. You're not usually dressed like this?" Darius cut him off, his tone razor-sharp but controlled. "Not wearing a suit, not stepping out of a luxury car, not surrounded by bodyguards. Is that it?" The manager swallowed hard. "No, sir, Save it." His voice dropped lower, colder. "You saw a black man in casual clothes near your display case, and your first instinct was theft." The words hit like gunfire, sharp, undeniable, impossible to dodge. The guard took a hesitant step forward. "Sir, please understand." Darius's eyes cut to him, and the guard fell silent instantly. There was something about that look, steady, unflinching, that made him realize this was no ordinary customer. The receptionist finally spoke, voice trembling. "Mr. Cole, I'm so sorry. We didn't know. If we had realized..." Darius turned to her, and his tone softened just slightly. "That's the problem. You only realize respect when it wears a name tag or a title." The woman's eyes filled with tears. She looked down, ashamed. Behind them, the large digital screens mounted on the wall flickered, and then changed. The company logo appeared, followed by a red message in bold letters.
"System lockdown initiated. Corporate override."
The guard stared at it. "What the hell?" Darius's phone buzzed again. He looked at the message, then spoke quietly into it. "Proceed with the protocol. Full inspection. Suspend all operations at the downtown branch." The manager's mouth went dry. "Sir, please, don't do this. It was a misunderstanding." Darius turned toward him slowly, his steps deliberate. "No." A misunderstanding is when someone forgets your name. This was a judgment. You saw me, and you decided who I was. He paused in front of the glass counter, staring down at the bracelet. Ruth's promise. The diamonds sparkled innocently, unaware of the chaos surrounding them. My mother used to say, he murmured, that dignity costs nothing, but losing it can cost everything. He looked up at the manager again. You just found out what everything feels like. From the doorway, the faint sound of a police siren grew louder. 2 uniformed officers appeared outside the glass entrance, their hands resting near their belts. They had been called before the truth came out. The guard moved toward them quickly, trying to intercept. It's fine now, officers. False alarm, he said nervously. But Darius spoke up, his voice carrying the weight of command. No. Let them in. The glass door slid open, and the officers stepped in. One of them, a younger cop with tired eyes, looked between the staff and Darius. We got a call about a suspected theft? The manager rushed forward. It was a mistake, officer. Everything's fine now. Darius folded his arms, watching quietly. The cop noticed him, the calm posture, the quiet authority. You the one they called about? Darius smiled faintly. Apparently. The cop looked confused. And you are? The manager jumped in quickly, voice almost panicked. He's Mr. Darius Cole, the CEO of this company. The older officer raised an eyebrow. Wait, the Darius Cole? The Cole & Comb guy? Darius nodded once. That's me. The younger cop whistled softly. Well, damn. He turned to the staff. So you accused your own CEO of stealing in his own store? The silence that followed was brutal. The receptionist's eyes welled up. The guard shifted uncomfortably. The manager's lips trembled. The older officer looked at Darius with something between respect and pity. You want to file a report, sir? Darius shook his head. No reports, no noise, just accountability. He glanced at the guard and manager. Their actions speak louder than any paperwork. The officer nodded. Understood. The police stepped back, quietly leaving the store. Outside, people had started gathering, whispering. A few passers-by were recording through the glass, realizing something dramatic was happening inside. Darius turned back toward the staff. His voice was softer now, but colder than before. The kind of calm that follows a storm. Do you know what your biggest mistake was? He asked. The manager looked down. Assuming. Assuming, Darius repeated. That a man who looks like me couldn't own what I built. That success has a color. That power needs a suit to be real. He stepped closer until he was inches away. I built this company on respect. Every store, every design, every client, all of it came from hard work and dignity. And today, my own team forgot that. The manager's eyes filled with tears. Please, Mr. Cole, I beg you, don't close the store. Don't fire us. Darius didn't answer. He just looked around, at the walls, the displays, the employees frozen in guilt. His gaze landed again on Ruth's promise. He whispered, almost to himself, she'd tell me to show grace, but not without justice. Then, louder, effective immediately, this store is closed. Corporate will handle further action. The receptionist sobbed quietly. The guard muttered, Sir, please my family. Darius raised a hand, silencing them. Maybe this will help you remember that every person who walks through those doors deserves respect, not judgment. He turned toward the entrance. The crowd outside had grown, phones raised, eyes curious. When the doors opened, a hush fell. People stepped aside instinctively as he walked out. Slow, composed, powerful. Cameras clicked. Someone whispered, That's Darius Cole. Another voice added, He owns the store. And then, as he stepped into the sunlight, the whispers grew, like a wave spreading through the street. He didn't stop, didn't look back. The store, his store, stood behind him in frozen shame. His Tesla was parked a few feet away. As he reached it, his phone buzzed again. A message from his operations director lit the screen. Store systems locked. Media inquiry incoming. Do you want to release a statement? Darius typed back. No statement. Let the truth speak for itself. He slipped into the driver's seat, removed his sunglasses, and looked at his reflection in the rearview mirror. For a moment, his face softened. not with anger, but sadness, because he wasn't angry for himself. He was angry for every person who had ever been treated like he just was, unseen, disrespected, devalued. He whispered, 9 minutes. That's all it took to show them who I am. And as he pulled away from the curb, the sign above the store glimmered in the morning light. Cole & Co. Jewelers. But today, that name didn't represent diamonds or luxury. It represented dignity, reclaimed. The silence in the store was thick, sharp, and electric. Every second felt like a slow drop of poison falling into a glass of clear water. The man, his name, though no one in that moment knew it, was Derek Cole, CEO of the world-renowned Cole & Sons Jewelers, stood near the diamond counter, calmly examining a platinum cufflink he had designed himself 5 years ago. He turned it over between his fingers, appreciating the precision of the craftsmanship, the sparkle that once symbolized everything he had built from nothing. But around him, eyes narrowed. The tension was no longer invisible. It was breathing, moving, judging. "Excuse me, sir," a voice called out sharply from behind the counter. It was Janet, the floor manager, her tone polite on the surface but soaked in suspicion. "Can I ask what you're doing with that piece?" Derek lifted his gaze slowly. He noticed the stiffness in her shoulders, the artificial smile struggling to hide fear or bias. "Just looking," he replied, calm, deep, controlled. "It's beautiful work." Her lips pressed tight. "Yes, but that particular piece isn't for handling without assistance. It's quite expensive." Derek gave a faint smile. "I understand. I'm familiar with its worth." That sentence should have ended it. But instead, Janet's brow furrowed, and she gestured toward the security guard at the door. "Tony," she said quietly, but loud enough for the rest of the staff to hear. "Keep an eye here, please," Derek noticed. Every gesture, every whisper, every nervous glance. It wasn't new to him. He'd lived this kind of quiet insult many times in boardrooms, at private events, even in first-class cabins where people assumed he didn't belong. But this was different. This was his store, his name, his investment, his creation. The walls themselves owed their shine to him. Tony approached, tall, broad, wearing a practiced expression of authority. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to place the item down." Derek looked at the cufflink again, then placed it gently on the velvet tray. "Of course," he said softly. "You don't have to raise your voice." Tony folded his arms. "I didn't raise my voice." Derek's eyes met his, steady, unreadable. "You almost did." A few customers had started watching. Some whispered, some pulled out their phones, recording discreetly, the way people always do when they sense a storm coming. Janet's voice wavered slightly as she tried to assert control. "Sir, we've had incidents before. I'm sure you understand we have to protect our merchandise." Derek exhaled slowly. "Incidents," he repeated. "And what exactly do I look like? An incident?" The words hung heavy in the air. Janet's expression faltered. She hesitated but pushed forward. "That's not what I meant, sir." Tony interrupted, his tone sharper now. "We just need to make sure nothing leaves this counter unpaid for. Store policy." "Store policy," Derek echoed, his voice still low, but now colder. "Interesting. I wrote that policy." Tony frowned. "What do you mean?" Derek didn't answer. He turned his eyes back to the glass case, then up toward the golden plaque on the wall. Cole & Sons Jewelers, EST, 1998. His last name, his legacy, his father's initials engraved into the brand. But no one seemed to notice. Then, a customer's voice sliced through the tension. "I think I saw him slip something into his pocket," the crowd murmured. A wave of shock, suspicion, and excitement rippled through the store. Janet's face went pale, Tony's stance hardened, and the atmosphere turned from cold judgment to outright accusation. Tony stepped forward. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to empty your pockets." Derek blinked once, very slowly. "You're going to ask me to what?" Tony gestured again. "Just to clear things up. I'm sure you understand." The humiliation was deliberate now, like a performance unfolding before an audience hungry for drama. Derek could feel the eyes on him, the cameras, the quiet smirks from those who had already decided what they believed. He reached into his pocket, not with anger but with devastating calm, and placed his phone, his wallet, and his car keys on the counter. "That's everything," he said. Tony frowned. "What about your coat?" Derek's jaw tightened. For the first time, a flicker of controlled fury crossed his eyes. He slowly removed his coat and laid it flat on the counter. The guard searched it, turning the pockets inside out. Nothing, just silence and the sound of nervous breaths. Finally, Derek spoke, his voice carrying the weight of power restrained. "Are you done?" Janet swallowed. We had to be sure." Derek nodded slowly. "You've made that very clear." He took his coat, slipping it back on with the composure of a man who knew exactly what he was capable of. "Call your district manager," he said quietly. "Now." Janet blinked. "What? Why?" "Because," he said, stepping closer, his voice calm but cutting through the room. Like a blade. "In about 9 minutes, this entire store will belong to no one." The room fell silent. Tony hesitated. The customers stared. Derek took out his phone and began typing. Calm, efficient, terrifyingly precise. The confrontation wasn't over. It had only just begun. The air inside the jewelry store had changed. What began as quiet tension had turned into a public spectacle, and Derek Cole now stood at the center of it, tall, composed, and eerily calm, like the eye of a storm everyone else couldn't escape. The store lights glimmered off glass counters and polished diamonds, but that brilliance only made the scene feel colder, harsher. People gathered closer, drawn by curiosity, by judgment, by the thrill of watching someone powerful, or so they assumed, fall. Outside, through the tall windows, pedestrians began to slow down, peering in as the crowd thickened. Inside, several phones were up, recording, ready to turn humiliation into entertainment. Social media had trained everyone to chase moments like this. A misunderstanding, a confrontation, a viral clip in the making. Tony, the guard, stood like a wall of authority beside Derek. "Sir, please don't make this harder than it needs to be," he said, though his voice was trembling slightly now. Derek turned to him slowly, expression unreadable. "You think I'm making it harder?" His tone wasn't angry. It was colder, quieter, too measured for anyone to interrupt. "All I did was walk into my store. You decided what that meant." A woman in the crowd whispered to her friend, "He's so calm. It's creepy." Another murmured, "He definitely took something. Why else would security stop him?" Their voices sliced the air, cruel and careless. Derek could hear every word. Years of boardroom diplomacy had taught him to stay still when insulted, but deep inside, something raw stirred, something he hadn't felt in years. Humiliation. Janet, the manager, tried to steady herself. Her face was pale, and her hands shook as she reached for the phone behind the counter. "I'm calling the police," she said, trying to sound confident but failing miserably. Tony nodded. "Good idea." The words hit like a gunshot. The police. In that single sentence, the entire room seemed to shift again. People stepped back slightly, sensing the weight of what was coming. Some smiled. There's a strange kind of satisfaction some feel when the law is about to descend on someone else. Derek didn't move. He simply adjusted his cufflinks, those same platinum designs he'd admired earlier, the ones his own company had created. He looked at them now, and for a brief second, he almost smiled. The irony was too sharp to ignore. Within minutes, the sound of sirens echoed faintly from the street outside. Through the glass doors, the flashing red and blue lights reflected against the polished marble floor, painting the room in chaos-colored streaks. People began whispering louder, stepping aside, creating a path toward Derek, the accused. 2 officers entered, a young man and a middle-aged woman, both with practiced expressions of control. "What seems to be the issue?" the female officer asked. Janet stepped forward immediately. "This man," she began, pointing toward Derek, "was seen handling merchandise and may have concealed something. We asked him to empty his pockets, and he refused at first. We just want to make sure everything's clear." Derek's eyes didn't leave hers. "You mean you want to make sure I'm guilty?" he said quietly. The officer raised a brow. "Sir, we just need to ask a few questions," Tony interjected, eager to assert himself. "He's been acting suspiciously since he walked in. He wouldn't tell us why he was here." Started touching the display items. Derek finally laughed, a sound so soft and controlled it almost froze the room. "Suspicious?" he said, taking a step forward. "Let me tell you something about suspicion, officer. Suspicion is what happens when perception replaces truth." The young officer looked uncomfortable. "Sir, if you could just provide some identification, we can sort this out." Derek nodded. Slowly, deliberately, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a sleek black wallet, and handed it over. The officer opened it and scanned the ID card inside. His eyes flickered. He read it again, and again. Then, without a word, he turned to his partner, showing her the card. She froze mid-step. "Is there a problem?" Janet asked, her voice breaking slightly. The older officer turned her gaze toward Derek, her expression shifting, respect replacing assumption. "Mr. Cole?" she said softly. "Derek Cole?" The entire room stilled. Tony frowned. "Wait, what?" Derek said nothing. He simply nodded once. The young officer cleared his throat, his voice suddenly uncertain. "Mr. Cole, as in Cole & Sons Jewelers?" "Yes," Derek said. "That's right." Janet's eyes widened in horror. You mean—" "I mean this store," Derek interrupted, his tone controlled, each word measured like a strike of a hammer. "This company, this entire brand, you work for me." A murmur ran through the crowd like a gust of wind. The color drained from Janet's face. Tony stepped back, his posture collapsing under the weight of realization. Phones were still recording, but now no one dared speak. The silence was deafening. Derek's phone buzzed, a single notification. He lifted it, tapped once, and spoke calmly into the receiver. "Activate code red on store 47, he said. "Effective immediately." Janet blinked. What does that mean?" "It means," Derek said, slipping his phone back into his pocket, "your shift just ended, permanently." The police officers exchanged uneasy glances, understanding they had stepped into something much bigger than a routine misunderstanding. Derek looked around one last time at the stunned faces. "You accused me of stealing from what I built," he said quietly. "But you didn't steal from me. You stole from yourselves. Every ounce of trust, every piece of dignity." He turned and began walking toward the door. No one dared stop him. The crowd parted silently, like a tide. The sirens still flickered outside, but inside, everything was still, like the world had paused to witness what true power looked like. And behind him, Janet's voice broke the silence in a trembling whisper. "What have we done?" The answer came not from Derek, but from the sudden dimming of the lights above, as the store's system automatically powered down. The message was clear. Cole & Sons, Store 47, closed until further notice. Further